We are back, and I am thrilled to be speaking to Amanda Seales, actress, comedian, host of the syndicated radio show, The Amanda Seales Show, and the Small Doses podcast. You can also see her stand-up in the city near you by going to amandaseales.com. Amanda, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. People were very excited that I was joining you.
Oh, really? Okay, well, I'm excited because you are basically one of the only big social media accounts, people with a platform, I guess, from like an American entertainment perspective, who are covering this genocide, I think, with the urgency that it requires, right from the outset you were. So, like, what have the past few months or 5 months or so been like for you, just kind of diving headfirst into this topic?
They've been very overwhelming. I think that's like a very generic statement, but it really encompasses the many touch points that have been affected by simply just having the accurate awareness of what's going on. So it affects your personal relationships. It affects your professional relationships. It affects your romantic relationships, so it affects your relationship with yourself. Like, I think I have to go on Lexapro because I'm so serious because it
right
really expanded. It really kicked in the door, waving the 4-4, shout to Biggie, of like the just kind of I think it was like the last phase of brainwashing that I had inadvertently been susceptible to just as an American. And it just kind of like took down that last shield. And you're like, oh, wow, like this is what it is. And, as James Baldwin behind me said, and I'm paraphrasing, but like to be aware is to constantly be in rage.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we had Peter Beinart on the program who spoke about, what the impetus is for somebody to start to question, Israel and the nature of settler colonialism. And he said something that I've now repeated many times because it sticks out to me, where he said, the more willing you are to challenge the myth of the United States being a promised land founded on a hostile frontier, the more likely you are to challenge the myth of Israel being a promised land founded on a hostile frontier. And there's a lot of people, and the president is like chiefly this kind of guy, who are unwilling to challenge the myth of American exceptionalism. And a lot of white people, honestly, feel much cozier in that kind of narrative too, which has been for me part of like some of my personal relationships have been damaged for what I've said because it's so offensive. And I still can't fully grasp why that is, but it's like an emotional reaction.
I think it really disrupts what people have attached their identity to, and their identities are already flimsy. And so, there's this idea that if I'm American, I'm XYZ, right? And it's like something that a lot of people can just like connect to make themselves feel purposeful, right? To make themselves feel worthy, to make themselves feel like that. It's essentially like when you watch reality TV to make yourself feel like, yeah, like my life is good if this is what's out there. And so American exceptionalism, it like trains us to think like, yeah, we're better because look what's out there. When essentially America's causing much of quote unquote what's out there. And ultimately for us to go along with it, it has to keep us at a very dulled median standard in terms of like our intellectualism or even our empathy.
Yeah. And for you, you work in the entertainment industry in Hollywood. Like, I got into a Twitter spat with Michael Rappaport last night. But
why would you do that to yourself, Em?
Because I'm sick. I'm sick.
You like cracked your knuckles like, let's waste our time.
Yep. Yeah. Matt jokes about it all the time. I just have like a mental disorder where I can't stop fighting with people, as if that's going to change anything. But like he and other Zionists, like Amy Schumer has a show coming out. She's doing the talk show circuits. She posted something that said Arabs are rapists. what's it like to be in the entertainment industry and see all of these horrific human beings getting professionally rewarded for being pro-genocide, and then like lone voices like you standing out about sticking out and standing up for what's right here, kind of just like being on an island a bit?
It's not a bit. I mean, I don't have any agents anymore. My publicist dropped me last week. And, you know, they don't tell you explicitly, like, yeah, we're dropping you because XYZ. But when you've been with them for years and I also signed a book deal last week. So shout out to me.
Nice.
So thank you. But I say that to say that it's like, so when you're producing professionally, but then they still drop you, right?
Right.
You're like, oh, the math, you know, is Palestine.
It's not mathing. Right. Yeah.
So that being said, you know, the island ends up somewhat being a bit of a safe space. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I am frustrated by watching that dynamic. Right. And then as a person, I'm like, you know, it really is unfortunate that this is where I'm being pushed. But I also feel like there's some level of appreciativeness I have that I am not, that I don't feel like I have to be in there to be effective or to have a livelihood. Like I've started to already see like, this is not a space I want to be in, because there's kind of this, like, if you can't beat them, join them mentality. And it's like, well, I don't want to join them. So I guess and I'm not trying to beat everybody down. So let me just go leave them. And so that's why I've been like, really moving in an independent space. Like, that's why it's so important as a stand-up, you know, to be doing my shows and to have my Patreon and creating all of this other independent content, because that is what allows me to even have this voice. When I look at that Hollywood system, I mean, this is just yet another phase of, you know, can I curse on here? I can't remember.
Yes.
This is just another phase of fuckery.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I mean, I'm a Black woman in Hollywood. Like, this is just like, oh, part 275,000 of Hollywooding. So I think it for me is just, I think the biggest part for me is watching how so many people go along with it that fancy themselves as progressive.
Right.
Like, you know, that fancy themselves as like, yeah.
Have they messaged some of those people who are not being public about their feelings? Are they messaging you behind the scenes, but just not saying it? Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's people who are just like, oh, you know, like, I didn't realize what's going on. Oh my gosh. Sometimes people will hit me and be like, thank you. You know, I really appreciate like all you're doing. Like, that happens all the time. But if I'm being fair, like, I don't expect actors to stand for much. Like, I don't expect, like, you didn't go into acting to like stand for things, you know. Yeah. I wish that our politicians did, but then you realize that politicians didn't go into politicking to stand for things either, which I think is one of the things that a lot of people are coming to realize. So I look at my peers and I'm just like, that's really what I got for them, aside.
Yeah.
But I also know, Emma, that I came into this business with that mindset. Like, I have been an actor since I was 8. You know, I became a comedian, which I feel like I connect far more with than the craft of acting. But I've been SAG since 94. Like, I've been in this field. I mean, I think that when I came in, though, as an adult, I went to Columbia, to the Institute for African-American Studies, Institute for Research in African-American Studies. And in my essay, I say, like, I want to come here because I want to speak through my art to my people. And I feel like I need to have a higher level of academic understanding beyond just my experience as a Black person in order to do that. So that was always, like, edutaining was always in, you know, my purview.
Your DNA. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe the dam could start to break, I guess, with some of these folks with a little bit more encouragement?
I think the word encouragement is interesting because I don't think it's in the traditional sense of like, hey guys, come on, Red Rover, send the humane people right over. Like, I don't think it's that. It's going to be just, how much more do you have to see? You know, like, I think that's really what it ends up being. If you talk to any anti-Zionist, they tell you that If you talk to any anti-Zionist that was originally raised as Zionist, they tell you that came out of them seeing.
Yep.
Like it literally, everyone has the same story. Like, I didn't know, and then I saw and was like, hold up. And in order to see, you have to be willing to do so. So I think the encouragement at this juncture ends up being just like, aren't you willing to know? And honestly, a lot of people don't want to know.
Yeah. Let's play this clip, and I would love to get your response to it, Amanda. Abby Martin has been doing incredible work in this space for quite a while, as reporting on Israel. And she went to a rally. It was an anti-immigrant rally in Tel Aviv. And this is such a good example of how Zionism is an extension of, or a sibling of, white supremacy, and how interconnected Zionism is with these systems of oppression, because this isn't just about Palestinians. This is about African immigrants in this instance. And you'll see here, I'll speak over, if they're not speaking in English for the podcast audience, but sorry, what'd you say, Bradley? Okay, but we're all set here. So this is a clip that I think you might have some thoughts on, Amanda.
With so many politicians openly calling to expel these so-called infiltrators and whipping up xenophobic hatred against refugees, we went to an anti-refugee rally in Tel Aviv, where demonstrators burned an effigy of the mayor for allowing the children of refugees into local schools.
And I'm a member of the Labour Party, and I consider myself left-wing. And I support this struggle because I think it's fair and it's just. They've come here with their practices and with their multitude of problems, and this cannot coexist. They must be removed en masse from here.
What are you doing?
Policeman, what are you doing here?
Traveling around. You present somebody? Huh?
You cannot get inside.
What does that sign?
What does that sign say? It says kids are not permission as a bypass for a non-permitted way of saying kids are not visas.
It's not, kids are not visas.
So you want them to just stop breeding, yeah?
This is not what I'm saying. If you stay inside the country in a rightful way, kids are not meant to bypass that. This is what we're
saying. But
saying.
doesn't use a condom mean literally stop having sex? Like stop giving birth?
I don't talk about condoms. I'm saying do not
holding a child with a sign that says use a condom.
I think we get a sense here. So that's a great, I mean, when he says I'm left wing, you know, within Israeli,
what wing is that?
There are liberal Zionism is a myth for that reason, because there's literally no way to be a left-wing settler colonizer, and they're just saying what Republicans say here in the U.S. about anchor babies and stop reproducing certain skin colors, etc. I mean,
liberalism is phony here too,
right?
So you know, there's that, because they're like, liberalism in America is like, yeah, it's all good as long as it doesn't disrupt my shit.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just such you can't exist in an ethno-state which is defined by preserving the purity of the state based on a religion or race and call your ideology left-wing. But that's probably him thinking like, oh, I want some more healthcare here in Israel. But let's keep bombing the people 3 miles away from us and starving them to death.
Well, it's very obviously, you know, on multiple levels, a practice of discrimination, right? Like there's just it's in the language, it's in the way the children are taught, it's in the militarization, it's in the occupation. I mean, like there's no simply just like, oh, well, it's just these people who are being discriminatory, but that's not Zionism as a whole. Like it's a benchmark. It's literally an inherent part of how they carry it out. And so you also look at this and you say to yourself, what do you people fucking want, bro? Like imperialism as a actual construct basically is like, we're going to come all over the world and we're going to take your shit, but we don't want you to come over here. So we just want you guys to stay where you are, to let us come and destroy you and take your stuff. But what happens at the end of that? Like it doesn't end. Like there's just this constant parasitic practice. And when I see stuff like this, it is very reminiscent of seeing white people with these like seething, angry faces, angry that Ruby Bridges is going to school with their children, right? It's the same faces that you see in Europe who are watching refugees who have risked their entire lives and their children's lives to get on boats. And they're just like, how dare they come here? And the irony as a Black person in particular is that those same people are so willing to take the cultures and the cultures and the spiritual practices and the fashions of all of these people. Yeah. They just don't want the people.
What is Israeli food? What is Israeli food? I've been to an Israeli restaurant in the past. What is it? It's Middle Eastern food.
Palestinian food.
It's Palestinian food.
And they changed the names. You know, my stepmother is Palestinian. My brothers and sisters are Afro-Palestinian. And, you know, you really are also, just by nature of that, I'm able to learn so much more just on a human level that a lot of people really haven't experienced yet. So like someone like this person who's saying like, I'm a left wing and I don't want them here. You ask them like, have you ever spoken to any of the people that you don't want here? Right. I wonder.
Well, we played a clip, and maybe you saw it from a few months ago. It was very long form of a settler who went across the border with somebody from Gaza, or maybe it was the West Bank. I forget exactly.
In the West Bank.
In the West Bank, yeah. And he was like, oh, I had to overcome fear that I thought just by being with a Palestinian, he was going to kill me. And then I realized just the daily humiliations that they face, and I understood why they would rise up. And it was just like, you see what Israeli society and how completely hermetically sealed it is. I heard, I was hanging out with a friend who loves your show, by the way, on Wednesday, and she said she knows somebody who just was in Israel for a 300-person wedding, and there are IDF soldiers commuting that were at the wedding because they were in Gaza the day before, and then they're coming back and just in the wedding, right? And like that is how society.
Yes, there it is.
It's so normalized, right? And they're getting their nails done, and people are starving to death right across the border,
across the street. Yeah,
and there's just no like, I think, mechanism within Israeli society right now to educate people whatsoever. The indoctrination is so deep, and that's why I get so annoyed when I hear now liberals in this country talking about how Netanyahu's really bad. He's got to go. No. This needs to be deconstructed because it's much deeper than the big bad.
1000%. I mean, by the way, Netanyahu the other day was at like an African summit saying, you know, Theodore Herzl, the founder of Zionism, said that after we free the Jews, we're going to free the Black people in Africa. And I'm just like, no, don't listen. But I really don't. And this is part of like the cap being blown off of like what you think of America, right? Because what you're saying, it's not in the exact same context, but it's like we live adjacent to houseless people on a regular basis, where we have effectively, as a society, there's an effective effort to say those people are bad. Be afraid of those people, right? Like there is a constant effort to vilify folks who may cause a discomfort to the comfort of capitalism, right? Or to the comfort of white supremacy, or to just the comfort. Yes. Like just the comfort in general.
I mean, the Jordan Neely story, I'm sure you remember. Ben Shapiro and other right-wing outlets, I guess, clipped my commentary on this on this program, and we're going off about it because what I was saying there is that, you know, people are essentially saying you can execute this person because of my comfort is more important than his life. And we're seeing this in kind of the late stage capitalist moment that we're in, which is that cities and places where people live are not they're not being designed for livability. They're designed for capitalism. So people can come in from Long Island and see a show in New York and take a subway and not have their experience in Disneyland Manhattan ruined, as opposed to like, how are we choosing to construct our society in a way where people can live as opposed to where people can make money? And our urban centers are becoming these kind of pristine theme parks as opposed to livable areas for human beings. And who gets pushed out? Well, it's the people on the front lines of white supremacy and capitalism.
it's like there's just so much wrong.
Yeah.
Like, and you end up having to ask yourself, okay, so where is my role in this? Once I know better, I have to do better. So where's my role in this, right? So like I've come to realize I'm a bullhorn. Like that's my role. Like I'm the bullhorn for like, hey, if you didn't know about this could be something you want to know about, because a lot of people have this energy of like, I want to be a part of shifting things like this. Like, okay, I'm realizing that our cities are Disneylands and they're not livable. How do we fix this? And that might be your passion, but you didn't even know that was a space where you can actually create change. Here you go. And when I look at what's going on in Gaza and in the West Bank, again, it's deeper because it's not just about capitalism as much as it's also it's not just capitalism, because they've also entrenched so many other devices to make it work, right? They've entrenched racism in there. They've been able to effectively co-opt Judaism as their method, even though there's swaths of Jewish people who are like, don't put me in this. I am not that. But I feel like for so many of us, we learned about colonialism in a very specific context. Now we are watching it play out in a very clear version in Palestine. And then it comes back to us in the ways in which it exists in our own doorsteps, right? Like even when we think about like Katrina and the way that people in the Ninth Ward in Katrina were treated, people calling them refugees. I'm like, they're in New Orleans.
Yes, they're Americans. Right. Yeah.
What?
It's exactly, you're exactly right on that front. And I think also people have abstracted the Holocaust also from history of like, it's just never forget. But like, what is the context that allowed the Holocaust to happen? What is the context that allowed other genocides to happen perpetrated by the West? And how is this a continuation of the nationalism that was and the fascism of Nazi Germany, but just like in Israel now being done by a religious government there? And it's, if you don't have that context, you just see things in silos, and it's about groups, but without any material basis underneath it.
Well, the other part of it too is that it's like, if it didn't happen to white people, a lot of people just don't think it really happened. I mean, like we talk about the Holocaust, but we don't talk about Congo. And I don't mean like what's happening in the DRC right now. I mean like what happened in the DRC with Leopold, right? Like we discount the fact that there was a British massacre in Kenya like 50 years ago. Like, like the Germans were in Namibia. I mean, like do we even talk about Australia and the complete effort to genocide the Aboriginal people? And I mean, go watch Rabbit Proof Fence, so like the Holocaust was terrible. It was absolutely horrible. I shouldn't even have to say all of that, but where we are in the times we are. So I'm going to say all of that. It was not the first. It is not the last. We're watching another version right now. And it's always been attached to the preservation of some white bullshit. And at this point, I'm really like, who started this? Like, is this some extraterrestrial shit? Like, I'm like, because white people burn in the sun and nobody else does. So tell me, where did this start? Because it is so pervasive. It has been going for so long, and it started as like white on white crime in like with like Vikings and the British, and then Braveheart, and then it was just like, what? Let's expand. Right. Let's do more. So at this point, I'm like, is this a human thing? Is it? I mean, I ask these questions all the time. I really hope that there's a interstellar version where I just go to the other side and everything's explained, and I can like drop books in Morse code to the Amanda that's here now.
That would be nice.
To be effective in helping.
We had a viewer write in, and I wanted to get to it. Blind Anti-Imperialism said, question for your guest. Do you see a lot of frustration from Black communities about the Gaza conflict? It's got to feel frustrating that so many people feel compassion for what the Palestinians are going through when nobody gave a fuck about Black issues for so long. That seems to be the feeling among some of my Black friends, and I can't really fault them for feeling that way, even if I disagree.
I think that's a bit myopic, right? Because a bit reductive, right? Because I think that BLM was like a very watershed moment for obvious reasons, and we saw the world stand up in a way that I feel I have never seen in my lifetime. I also feel like Palestinians are like, I mean, I know this because when I perform lately, I've been performing with my keffiyeh, and Palestinians are like, it's crazy to see somebody on stage wearing a keffiyeh. Like, this has never happened like in our lifetime. I mean, my sister was afraid to do my podcast because she was like, I don't want it to mess up my job. And then she was like, man, fuck that, and then she did my podcast, and it was side effects of Palestine. But like the fact that she had to go through that process, and she is a Black person and a Palestinian person, right? Like, so I think for me, I don't share that. I don't feel like I have that internally, but I do feel like there are people that do feel that way. I think it is unfortunately very short-sighted, and ultimately we are stronger together. It is imperative that we understand that most of the reason why people don't pay attention to other people is naturally because of white supremacy's effectiveness, right? Like the inability for people to grasp like Black issues that are right under their noses is oftentimes because it is constantly told to them that it doesn't freaking matter. I think there's a certain level of extreme that it requires for people to wake up. Like, they had to watch George Floyd be murdered for 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Had it been 2 minutes, would it have caused the same outrage?
Right. Right.
Well,
I mean, although I'm seeing, like a mangled 5-year-old girl hanging in Gaza on the wall, and people still seem to be closing
their... that on. Yes. Yeah. Right. No, you're right.
But to your point, right. Like, we need this extreme example of what we've been telling you for so long. I mean, for me, I've observed the opposite as a not Black person, obviously, but like there has been a historic solidarity with many like Black activists and Palestinians before.
Yes.
And
which is a history that's been silenced.
Yes. And it's also not a coincidence that the initial members of Congress who came out and were the first to talk about a ceasefire, all people of color, all of them.
Zero clear folks. Yep. Not a one.
Yeah. Exactly.
Not a one.
So,
but it's the same thing. Like, there's a history of even, Black and Asian solidarity, right? And that has been quieted. Like, there's histories of solidarity. Right. And divide and conquer is not just some catchphrase. I mean, it's an effective method to quiet folks and silence folks and disarm folks from the real strength of their humanity. We had the former head of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, the brilliant Sherilyn Ifill, on my podcast, Small Doses, last week. And we did actually a 2-part episode, Side Effects of Civil Rights. And one of the things among the bajillion gems that she dropped in these 2 episodes, one of the things that she said is that the real effort of imperialism, of colonialism, of white supremacy has been to disarm us of our empathy. Because our empathy is what allows us to see each other. And if we see each other, then we feel compelled to help each other. And that helping each other disrupts their ability to poach from us. And you wonder, like, well, what happened to them? Why are they like that? And I don't know. I don't know what makes some people so bereft of morals, of ethics, of principles, of love. I really don't. I mean, hurt people, but I'm like, God damn.
I honestly think it's cowardice to a degree. Like, people would rather they feel threatened by their preconceived notions being challenged, where I feel energized by it. Like, learning more and more is maybe like the great gift that I feel like I have with life.
Curiosity is,
Yeah. But some people feel threatened, I think, by their like their carefully curated worldview being punctured, and so they react in fear.
I'm just like, who designed that iOS, Em? Like,
I know,
where, like,
I know. I know.
I'm just like, there's a glitch. Like, so,
Yeah.
you know, but to that point though, there's like you and me, right? Like where you both of us agree, like we are empowered by like curiosity. Like that feels like exciting to me. And that's in every way. Like I want to be curious about my partner. I want to be curious about the world. Like that really feels like energy. And like you said, then you have the other people who are like, but then there's like this whole middle ground of folks who have curiosity, but don't know what to do with it and are kind of in just stasis. And those are the folks that I feel like I am really trying to reach. There's two groups that I'm really trying to reach. It's the folks that are already on it and need encouragement because this shit is draining and exhausting. And you need to be able to see yourself and other people's work in order to be like, yes. And also you need to see that other people are working so that you can take a break and know that it's going to continue. And then there's also, you know, this group of people who are like, I've been trained to be silent. I've been trained to be cowardice, but I know like there's like this little voice in the back of my head that's like, this isn't right. And so I really feel like so much of my purpose on earth is to connect to that little voice and and put my little megaphone there and be like, get louder, get louder, get louder. And I've been very fortunate to have so many people tell me that, you know, from listening to my podcasts and my radio show and going to my shows, that they found their voice, you know, that they found that key to unlock this door that had been shut by either how they were raised or, you know, the environment that they were in, or just the indoctrination of America.
Yeah, I mean, so what you're telling me is that maybe fighting with Michael Rappaport isn't the thing that's most productive in trying to change minds.
You know, I think though you have to ask yourself, like, why am I fighting with Michael Rappaport? Because there is a form of therapy in just like knowing you're right. Mm-hmm. And engaging with a jackass.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, as somebody who considers myself a queen of clapbacks, I get it. Like, trust me, no judgment here. No judgment here.
Well, Amanda, I really appreciate you coming on today. Teacher Dan writes in, says, tell me how to listen more to this woman. This is the first time hearing. So this is a great way for you to talk about what you've been working on.
Thank you, Teacher Dan. So you can check out the Amanda Seales Show. That's my syndicated radio show. We are syndicated in select cities, but you can also check us out wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check out my other podcast, Small Doses. Every week I have a themed, very enlightened and humorous conversation with somebody who knows their shit. And it's a self-improvement and educational podcast. So you can check that out wherever you get your podcast. Basically, it's called Small Doses because we give you potent truths for everyday use. You can also follow me on Instagram. You can go to my Patreon, Amanda Seales. And I've also started doing these sessions, these live YouTube sessions called the Common Sense Kickback. So you can subscribe to my YouTube, Amanda Seales TV. Last night, we did a live session with Greg Stoker, who has become an internet fave. It's
that guy, he's awesome. Yeah.
Isn't he awesome?
Yeah, he's
I always say he's the kind of white guy I would have been friends with in 7th grade. And so we were really fortunate to get to talk to him because he was giving folks a lot of context around the anti-war activism of Vietnam and the sophisticated efforts that they took and how we can use some of that as a paradigm for how we elevate our anti-imperialist activism in this era. And, you know, my goal is always to take like these ideas, these big ideas, and like bring them down to a palatable size, a travel size that people can put in their back pocket and move with. So check that out at Amanda Seales TV. There is no shortage of content from your girl. Okay.
Oh my God. You are busy. You are busy.
And I'll be in San Diego tonight doing stand-up. So you can also catch me doing stand-up in your city. I am a funny broad. I know this conversation didn't really give a lot of space for that, but you can catch me wherever. Go to amandaseales.com. I'll be in Birmingham, Alabama in March. I will be in Stamford, Connecticut. I'll be in Boston, Baltimore, New York. We have a lot of dates coming up. So go to amandaseales.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you can stay in tune, Teacher Dan. And shout out to our educators.
Yeah.
Big up to our educators.
We love Teacher Dan here. And when you're in New York, I got to catch you because that'll be great.
Yes.
So anyway, really appreciate your time today, Amanda. We'll put a link to all of that in the description wherever people are listening to or watching this. Matt, did you want to say something? Nope. Okay. All good. Thanks so much,
I just want to say
Amanda.
something to Matt. Matt,
Yeah.
I appreciate your head nods. I can see
Oh,
Matt
you
in the
can see,
control room, and
right.
he's over there like, yep, mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. That's right.
You
that's
are
right.
a nodder. You are a nodder.
Am I not?
It's very affirming. So thank you. Thank you all so much. I had a great time. I appreciate it.
man.
Yeah, it was great.
I
great
love the
to
work
have
you're
you.
doing.
Yep. Thank you. You too. Appreciate you.